Okay, I would like to go back a little bit. First of all, what were your parents' names?
My parents' names, my mother was Stella. My father's name was Frank. My brother's name is Frank Jr.
What did your parents do before they took
What
your
did they
career?
do?
Yeah, what were their occupations before they
I
took
don't know
your
what you
career
mean.
over?
What did they do? My mother was taking care of my brother, and my father traveled with me.
Okay, before that, what did your father do?
He worked as a suit cutter. I told you that. A pants in a factory made, and also started a lot of unions by bombing a lot of the places until they joined the union. And we became very friendly with a lot of the boys. And I was always the kid again, back to the kid again. And I was just reminded that when I played the Palace Theater in Chicago, Al Capone came backstage to see my father and said, "We'd like you to come over to the house for dinner. And we'll pick you up." And he's, "Well, she's got shows to do." Well, bring her back for the shows, And I went to their house. I met his wife, and they had a dining room table that sat 24 people, all chairs to match, which I'd never seen before. Usually after 8 chairs, you get bridge chairs, They didn't have any bridge chairs. They had regular chairs to match the furniture. And I met Ice Pick Willie and all these kind of people, and all wonderful people, and very pleasant, very nice to me. And Al Capone gave me a dinner ring with 3 diamonds in it, which I still have, by the way. And so when I worked the Copa, I worked for the boys down there. The boys ran the Copa. They pretty much ran all of the nightclub circuit, and I played every one of them. In fact, when I came out here in 46, they had called me to open up the Flamingo in Las Vegas, Bugsy Siegel. This was the third hotel on the Strip. There was the El Rancho, and there was the Last Frontier. And then Bugsy put up the Flamingo. And they had Xavier Cugat and his orchestra, Jimmy Durante, and myself. I am pregnant at this point. But I said, I've got to play the show because I want to work with Durante. I'm not an impersonator, but I used to do an imitation of Durante. And to this day, his wife, Marge, says she does the best Durante of anybody. And I got to be known for that. So the opportunity of working with Jimmy was just wonderful, And as I say, I was 5 months pregnant at that point. And we went there, and the show was tremendous. And Jimmy and I did an afterpiece for a finale where he would say, "One of us is an imposter, and I don't know which one it is," And he would do all these kind of things. And we were a smash. They brought in 3 busloads or 3 plane loads of stars. The biggest stars in Hollywood came. And you name them, they were there for opening night. The second night, they were there. The third night, they went back to L.A., and we had 9 people to work to. Vegas was afraid of this hotel because it was too classy. It wasn't, the cowboy kind of hotel that they were used to. And but in contrary to what people have said about it, the hotel never closed. The show went on and on. Different shows came in. Dorothy Shay followed me in, and then somebody else came in. So they never stopped until after Bugsy got killed, and they went on to something else. But as I say, the Flamingo was the third hotel there, and I worked it. And I worked it when the new guys came in. I worked there 4 or 5 times a year. They looked after me very, very well. They took very good care of me. I always say they're wonderful and they're great people. Just don't get them mad at you. That's all. Just don't get them mad at you. They're fine. They're wonderful. And I love every one of them.
Did you ever meet Bugsy Siegel?
Oh, sure. I worked for him. I was supposed to go in like tonight. And the show was to open tomorrow. Well, it rained tonight, and the plane to Vegas didn't fly to Vegas. There was one plane. And my husband said, "You're not going to drive in your condition. You'll go tomorrow." I said, "But we open tomorrow." He says, "You'll go tomorrow." Well, on that plane, everybody was on. Cugat, Jimmy, everybody. And we got to the hotel. There were no rooms at the Flamingo. There was just the casino, the coffee shop, and the dining room. Everybody stayed at the El Rancho. So we all had rooms at the El Rancho. So the first week I was there, I get this man came around. I was in the coffee shop having a cup of tea and stuff. The man came around saying, Rosemary, here's your check. Here's your check. Here's your check. And I took the check, and there was $11 missing from my check. I said, I got to find out about this. And the fellow that I was with was the Tommy Wonder. He was a dancer in the show. He says, don't bother him. I said, there's $11 missing from my check. I want to know what it is. Leave it alone. Don't go near it. I said, psst, to this guy. I said, come here. I said, there's $11 missing from my check. I said, did you draw any money? I said, who draws $11? He says, let me find out about that. I said, look, if you need the $11, I'll give it to you, but don't take it out of my check. Now, Tommy Wonder is white. He's so scared. And he says, I'll be right back. And this guy goes away. And Tommy says, do you know who that is? I said, no. He said, that's Bugsy Siegel. I said, well, you're going to pick me up in an envelope, you know. So he came back and he said, you were supposed to be here Wednesday night. I said, yeah, but it was raining and the plane didn't take off and I came in Thursday. He said, well, we had to guarantee your room at the El Rancho, so we laid out $11 for your room. I said, oh, okay, fine. As long as I know what it's for. No, I'll get it back. No, don't bother. That's fine. Just leave it alone. And then another night he saw me sitting in the coffee shop and he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm having a cup of tea. He says, come here, do you know how to play baccarat? And I said, yeah. He says, come on. I said, I'm not a shill. I am a performer. I work in that room. He said, you're not doing anything. Come on and play some baccarat. Maybe you can draw some people. So he gave me $10,000. And I sat down and I played back. Well, when I play with somebody else's money, I win. And I won $25,000. Now it's 5 of 12 and I got a show at 12 o'clock. And I'm looking for this man and I can't find him. And I take the money and I shove it in here. And I go backstage and get dressed to do my show. I do my show with the money in the dress. I come out and I see him standing there. I said, don't ever do this to me again. He says, I knew you were all right. I didn't know you weren't going to run away. I said, don't ever do that to me again. I said, I'm not a shill. I'm a performer. He says, you won. I said, yeah, I won. He gave me money. So I knew him very well. And when I left, he called me in his office and he said, it was a pleasure having you here. Thank you for being so gracious. And he was very sweet and very nice to me. In fact, his girlfriend, Virginia Hill, said to me, you do such a wonderful show. And I said, thank you. And she says, but you should lose a little weight. I said, I'm going to have a baby in 3 months. I said, so maybe after that, I think I'll be fine. Oh my God, I didn't know. She said, I'm going to Paris. Do you want anything from Paris? And I said, a christening dress for the baby. The prettiest one you can find. And she brought me back a christening dress. I still have it.
Wow. And so after you had the baby, that's when you stopped performing for a while?
No, I went right back to work again. About 3 to 6 months after, I went right back to work. Went to the Capitol Theater in New York because I played there every year. And I went back to New York and started playing all these theaters again that had vaudeville, you know, but it was a different type of vaudeville. The Capitol Theater had people like Sally and Tony DeMarco and people like that, you know. So I played the Capitol Theater. I played the Mounds Club in Cleveland. I played Lowy State in New York. I played Hartford. I played all those theaters.
How had vaudeville changed since you began?
Well, it wasn't as prominent as it was years ago. It was just every once in a while they would have a show, you know. And there was a movie with it. We did 3 or 4 shows a day, you know. When I played the Chicago Theater in Chicago every Thanksgiving, I wound up doing 8 and 9 shows a day. That's the most I ever did. Was 8 shows a day at the Chicago Theater. People came in at 10 o'clock in the morning. Unbelievable. With the groceries.
Did you have full houses most of the time?
Always. It was wonderful. It was amazing.
Okay, let's jump forward back to television.
Well, I did mostly television out here is where I really did it out here. I got a information that I should get an agent for television and movies, which I never had before. I was signed to an office that booked me for nightclubs and theater and stuff like that, but I never had a television movie agent. And Kathy Lewis, who was married to Elliot Lewis at that time, said, Cuman Olnick, that's the name of it. My God, I remembered it. Cuman Olnick was the office. And so I went up there and they said, well, fine, like, what have you done? And my usual answer is, about what, And they said, well, we're going to represent you. We got to know. I said, I've never done any straight acting before. I'm strictly a variety performer. I've worked Milton Berle show and this show and that show. And they said, well, all right. I said, I'd like to do some straight shows. So they said, what's your last name? I said, I don't use a last name. I just use Rosemarie. He said, we got to have a last name. I said, no, I don't. It's just Rosemarie. It's fine. Okay, They never heard of that. And the first thing I got a call was for Gunsmoke. And I thought, oh, that's pretty good, And so here I go up I had an agent at Cuman Olnick office called Jim Maloney. He was the best agent I ever had. He was the kind of an agent that would say, I told him you could ride. You can ride, can't you? And I go, yeah, sure. You can do a Southern accent, can't you? I said, sure, I can do a Southern accent. You can ride a bicycle. Yeah, I can ride a bicycle. I can do anything, So he called me up and he said, pick up the script over at the studio. So I go there and I'm dressed in a little black and white, adorable outfit with white gloves and adorable looking, 21 years old, And I go in and the girl gives me the script and I read it and I go, it's the wrong script. She says, no, it's not the part of Mrs. Monger. I said, that's a 60-year-old woman. That's what, Okay, so I think I'm not going to get this anyway. I'm just going to camp it up and have a lot of fun with it. So I go into the office, and then Lynn Stallmaster was there, the casting man, John Rich, the director, and I forgot who else. And I looked at the script, and Lynn Stallmaster read with me, worst reader in the world. He says, I'll read with you. I said, fine. So he went, howdy, Mrs. Monger, and I figured I'm going to camp this up all the one. I went, howdy, Marshall. And he said, how you feeling? I said, poorly, thank you. And the script said, poorly, thank you. I said, poorly, thank you. And they said, that's enough. And I said, well, I didn't get it, so, I started to walk out. And John Rich, the director, comes over to me and he says, would you mind cutting your nails? I said, what? He said, cutting your nails. I said, why? He said, I don't think a woman sawing wood would have nails like that. I said, you want me for this part? He said, I think you'd be great. So that was my first straight acting part, was on Gunsmoke.
How did you age yourself?
I didn't. I didn't wear any makeup. I didn't do anything with the hair. Nothing. Just all on natural.
And you were and you were still.
And I looked 60. No. Then I did a lot of shows like that. I did a little Care, Heinz Playhouse. I did Jim Bowie. I did The Virginian. I did all those kind of things. A lot of costume things. DA's Man, which was a Jack Webb show. Adam 12. I did them all. Every one of them.
Did you find yourself cast as a particular type at any point?
No, not really. No, everything was, I was just an actress. I was just a straight actress. The first series I did was Bob Cummings' show. And a friend of mine was writing the show, and I said, hey, I'd like to guest shot on that show. And he says, okay. So he wrote in a part, and they called me, and I was on that show for 3 years. I learned an awful lot from that man. He taught me so much. He used to say to me, don't Mickey Mouse. And I said, what do you mean don't Mickey Mouse? He says, you're so broad. He says, from working in theater and stage, he says, television is like this. You go like this. He says, it gets, keep it down, keep it low. And I said, okay. I said, you'll tell me when I do it. He said, I'll tell you when you do it. And I would do a scene or something. He'd go, Mickey Mouse. And I'd calm right down, He was wonderful to me. I learned an awful lot from him. And Lee Marvin taught me an awful lot. I did M Squad with him. And he said, see that light? That's your light. You make sure you got that light on you all the time. Don't let anybody get back in front of you. And I go, okay, watch that light. I said, okay. I learned a lot from a lot of people.
Back to the Bob Cummings show. Who did you work with on that show? Did you work?
Who did I work with? Mm-hmm. Rosemary DeCamp, Dwayne Hickman, Bob, of course, and George Montgomery was on all the guest stars that were on George Montgomery. I met George Montgomery on the show. I bought all his furniture for my house because George Montgomery made furniture. You knew that. Mm-hmm. My dining room table is his. That's his. A lot of things are his. Who else was on the show? Oh, everybody was on that
Ann B.
show.
Davis, did you work with her? Ann B. Davis?
Oh, Ann B. Davis, yeah. She was a regular on the show, and then I became a regular, and we were paired together all the time. Yeah.
What was your character? What was your character?
Oh, God, let me see. Martha. I was one of the secretaries, Martha. I was wound up with Martha, Bertha, those kind of names. And I did. Martha was that show, yeah. That was my character. I was one of the secretaries.
Did you ever feel like an outsider at some of these casts when you just come in?
No, usually on a television show, when a cast has been together a long time and you do a guest shot, they feel very much out of it, you know. But everybody was so wonderful to me that I never felt that way. And Bob was just great. And I never felt out of place or anything like that. I always felt a part of it. And I did that show for 3 years. And then I did My Sister Eileen over at Columbia for a year. And then I did the Dick Van Dyke Show. And then I did the Doris Day Show. And then I did SWAT. And then I did Scorch. And then I did Hardball. And then I did, oh, God. Love the series.
Okay, before we go to My Sister Eileen, I just wanted to ask you, you also appeared on a lot of live shows, well, those were mostly the variety types.
Like what?
You know, like you were saying, the Burls and all that kind of
stuff. Oh, yeah, I did all that
Yeah.
all the time.
Can you talk a little bit about...
I did Colgate Comedy Hour, quite a bit of that with different people, Lewis and Martin and Lewis, and Colgate Comedy Hour, did the Dean Martin Show, did the Gleason Show, did all the variety shows, yeah.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about working in live television?
Well, that's all I knew was live television at that point till I started doing series. It never even dawned on me to worry about it, because I was used to doing live things anyway.
Were you very conscious of the cameras?
Nope. Somehow, in an earlier life, someplace, I must have had something to do with show business, because I know too much about my business. I really do. It's like saying, I know this should be that, and I know that should be that, and I don't know why. You know? So.
What about the, did you ever have a lot of mishaps in live television? Things that...
Mishaps?
Yeah.
Not that I can think of. I've always been, excuse the expression, very professional about my work. I go in prepared, I know what I'm doing, and everything is fine. I've never had any mishaps. I can't think of anything.
What about any kind of special costumes or makeup, things like that?
Oh,
in
God,
live
that
television?
happens in every show, you know. I mean, I was drenched in oil on My Sister Eileen, you know. But that was the part at that point, you know. And we had a lot of different things on the Doris Day Show. Different outfits and different things, different reasons for certain things, and skiing and that, you know, things like so that happens with every show. Nothing unusual.
Okay, and you also, you worked in Top Banana?
And I did the stage show in 1951. I did the stage show. I went back to New York, and Phil Silvers called me, and he said, "I want you to do this show with me." I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm married. I got a daughter. You know, bring him out here with you. You know." So I did Top Banana for about a year, and then I came home, and he went on the road, and I didn't go on the road with it. Audrey Meadows went on the road with it, and when they made the movie, he called me and he said, "I want you to do the movie." I said, "All right." Well, the movie was horrible. The movie was a disaster.
Why was it a disaster?
Because the guy that did it, the guy that directed it, wanted to do it like a stage play instead of doing it like a movie, and it just didn't come across right. You know.
How was it working with Phil Silvers?
Oh, divine. The man was absolutely wonderful. Well, I had my daughter there with me, and I used to put her in the wings to watch the show. And one afternoon after a matinee, when we went out to take our bows, everybody would take their bow, then I would come out and take my bow, then Phil would come out and take his bow. And when he came out, the whole audience went, "Oh!" He had my daughter by the hand. And I looked and I said, "Oh my God, what's she going to do?" She was 5 or 6. And the audience laughed and applauded and everything. And then when the curtain came down, he said to me, "Remember, I'm the first one to put her on the stage." And it was at the Winter Garden where I started. When I was 4 years old, I did a Vitaphone short that played with the jazz singer at the Winter Garden Theater in New York. Played there 16 weeks with Al Jolson. And so I really got my start at the Winter Garden Theater in New York. And he said, "Remember, I'm the first one to put her on the stage."
Did your daughter go on stage subsequently?
No. Funny thing about that is when I worked with Danny Thomas in New York at the Martinique, in between shows he had been gone, and he came back, and he was like, the stars were in his eyes. And I said, "What's the matter?" He says, "I just did a benefit." I said, "You get all that excited about a benefit?" And he says, "I just did a benefit at the Winter Garden Theater." He says, "The Winter Garden Theater is where Jolson was, where all these people." He says, "I bent down and I kissed the stage." And I said, "I hope you never lose that feeling, Danny. That's a wonderful feeling." So that was the Winter Garden with Top Banana.
You also were in The Big Beat.
That was the first movie I did out here. Yeah, for Universal. Yeah, nothing too exciting about that.
Do you remember the director, Will Cowan?
I know Will Cowan. I knew Will Cowan. That's how I got the job. He had seen me work, and he said, "I want you in the picture." Yeah.
Did you work with Fats Domino in that film? Fats Domino?
Yeah, well, I didn't work with
You
him.
didn't work with him?
I was one of the ensemble in the cast. He was a cameo type thing. So I never worked with him. I never saw him, you know.
Okay. Let's talk about My Sister Eileen.
My Sister Eileen, I did with Elaine Stritch. And I did that for a year at Columbia. And nothing happened out of that, so that was the end of that.
How did you get the part?
My friend that wrote the Bob Cummings show.
Who was that?
Oh God, I can see him. Oh, don't do that to me. Oh. I can't think of his name, damn it. Not fair, I should remember it. But he called me and he said, I'm gonna write My Sister, Dick Wesson. Dick Wesson was his name. And he said, I'm gonna do My Sister Eileen, I want you to do I said, fine. And that's how I got that part.
Can you describe the show, what it was about?
Sister Eileen? You don't know the story of My Sister Eileen?
Well, this is for people, 50 years from now watching this.
50 years from now? What an optimist you are. Well, it's a classic show. Everybody knows the show. It's a classic show. About two girls that come in from Ohio, and one is a writer and one is a very pretty girl, and they try to break New York, and they have all this mishaps and all these different things that happen to them in New York. That's all. That's all it is.
And this was a comedy part for you.
Yeah, it's a comedy part.
Now,
Wisecracks all the time. Yeah, you know.
And how long were you on the show?
A year.
Did you work with Harry Ackerman, executive producer?
I knew Harry Ackerman very well, but I don't think I ever worked for him. I don't remember, really. I guess he was the one that did the show, but I don't remember. Mm-hmm. But I knew him. I met him, Harry Ackerman, yeah.
How about the directors?
Probably Dick. Dick Wesson probably was the director, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, and talk about working with Elaine Stritch and
Terrible.
Shirley. What do you mean?
Terrible. She was weird. She was very weird. She was very come in late and kibitz around and not get the job done and just very weird. We got along fine because I said, do what you want to do, pal. I'm here to do my job and that's it, you know. So I see her once in a while, you know, we say hi and that's about it.
Did you wear the bow in your hair at
No.
that time? When did that start?
That started with the Van Dyke Show.
Okay. Before we get to the Van Dyke Show, I want to ask you if you have any memories of the Blacklist. Were you
Memories of what?
of the Blacklist? Did you have any doings with the Blacklist in television?
I don't know what you're saying.
The Blacklist.
The
Blacklist, part of the Red Channel.
Oh, that!
Yeah.
No, I don't know anything about that. Blacklist? What the hell is she talking about? I don't know anything about that at all.
Okay, you were never asked to sign a loyalty oath, anything like that?
No, never had anything to do with any of that.
Okay, so let's talk about the Dick Van Dyke Show.
I was very friendly with Danny Thomas. I had worked with him in New York when he came from Chicago as the Great White New Hope comic from Chicago, and he opened at the Martinique in New York, and I was his opening act. And we became very good friends. His wife's name is Rosemary, too. And he always thought I was a great performer, and he always liked the way I worked and all this and all that. So when we came out here, I said, when am I going to do your show? He said, oh, you'll do the show, don't worry, because he had a big hit show, and I wanted to do it, and I was doing a lot of television then. And they would come to see me in Vegas, he and his wife, and Sheldon and his wife would come. And in fact, Sheldon was kind of like my mentor. He was wonderful. He and Danny, both. And they would come and say, don't you ever die on stage? And I go, not if I can help it, And they said, and I said, when am I going to do your show? He said, oh, your time will come, your time will come. Okay. So I get a call one day, and they said, go to Desilu, and Danny Thomas' office says, oh, I'm going to do the show. She said, no. She said, this is for the new show, Dick Van Dyke. I said, what's a Dick Van Dyke? They'll tell you when you get there. So I arrive, and Carl Reiner's there, and Sheldon, and Danny, and I didn't have to read or anything. The part was mine, and one of the nicest compliments I've ever gotten was Carl told me that Sheldon said to him, you want the best for this part? Get Rosemary. And then after the show was over, Carl sent me a wire, and he said Sheldon was right. It's one of my prized possessions. I said, who have you got to the third writer? They said they haven't decided yet. I said, what about Maury Amsterdam? Now, I've known Maury since I was 11 years old. I met him when I first came out to the coast here to do the Al Pierce show. He was on the Al Pierce show as a regular. Then, when I went back to New York, he was living in Yonkers. We'd see one another, here and there, and at dinner and all this kind of stuff. And so we were very friendly. And I said, why don't you call Maury Amsterdam? They said, do you know where he is? I said, he lives in Yonkers. So they called him, and I called him, and I said, they're going to call you about a new show called The Dick Van Dyke Show. And he said, what's a Dick Van Dyke? I said, I don't know, but we'll find out, And he said, I'll be out Monday. He came out Monday, and they signed him, and we were all set. So I helped Maury get the job on The Dick Van Dyke Show.
Can you tell me how the show was explained to you before you...
Wasn't explained.
Did you see the pilot, the original pilot of the show?
We were in the pilot.
No, the original one that Carl
We didn't
Reiner
see
was
that till
on.
much later. Till much, much later. We had been on the air maybe a month or two, maybe more, and Carl brought out the one that he did.
Oh, so you'd never seen...
No, with Barbara Britton. No, we never saw that one. But I guess it was 2 months after the show, And in fact, the show was sold that night. The night we made the pilot. Procter & Gamble and Kent Cigarettes bought the show that night. We were sold. And we did 13 shows, and we were canceled. And everybody went out looking for other jobs. And Sheldon, God rest his soul, went back to New York, spoke to the commercial people, spoke to Procter & Gamble, spoke to Kent. He says, leave this show on for the summer. I know it'll make it. Leave it on. Don't take it off. And because of Sheldon and nobody else, that show stayed on, and that's how we became a hit.
Let's stop there to change the tape.